The IRS is a criminal institution solely based on the fact that it audits Americans and doesn't even tell them how much they owe. They will sit there and treat you like that of someone in a high noon showdown, and you will sit there and ask, "How much do I owe?" And they will rebuttal, "Well, how much do you think you owe?" And if you get it wrong, they will send the enforcement arm of the state through the police to come after you for not properly paying your dues as tax chattel. Let's go ahead and jump into some of these articles that I've been holding on to. Let's go ahead and see why the nature of the IRS is nothing more than that of a criminal institution that is part of the racketeering scheme that is the arm of the mafia that funds the warfare state. Let's go. From the Wall Street Journal, Americans failed to pay a record $688 billion in taxes. The IRS says that will change. So, the extortion arm of the federal government, which is the IRS, which the federal government, just being the largest racketeering scheme in existence, is saying that you didn't pay the largest mafia in existence your fair share. And with it, they're going to be ramping up the funding for these agencies and employing new tactics. We will be going into those tactics. Let's go. Americans didn't pay an estimated $688 billion in taxes due to their 2021 returns, the largest shortfall ever. Audits and other enforcements will be stepped up to reduce the gap, the IRS said. Well, here's the deal. When they say audits and other enforcements will be stepped up to reduce the gap, who are the people that are audited the most? Who are the people that are regulated the most in this economy? It's the poor, people who are in impoverished communities and in minority communities. These are the people that are audited the most by the IRS. Do you think that they're going to stop doing this, or that they're only going to put their foot on the pedal and ramp up the factor of what they're doing to an even higher factor? Of course they're only going to continue doing it, and they're going to floor it. The number includes $542 billion of underreported income, with the remainder of the shortfall owed by those who didn't file returns when they should have and never paid their bills. The total gap is more than $138 billion from the estimates of the tax years of 2017 to 2019. Much of the increase is due to the economic growth. Well, here's the deal. They say economic growth, but what they're really talking about, and they're referencing all the time when they talk about the factors of, well, we're seeing record profits for many of these companies, so the economy is doing fantastic. Well, the reason we're seeing record profits is because inflation is at a record height, and that means that the dollar is worth less, so you will need more dollars in circulation to actually accrue profit. And with that, that means you will have record profits if there are more dollars. But that means you will also have less profit as a whole despite having record profit margins on the books because the dollar is worth less. And what we see is it says taxpayers' overall compliance rate is projected to stay relatively steady at 86.3% for the tax year 2021 after audits and other enforcement actions. The largest element of non-compliance, $182 billion, was attributed to undeclared business and farm income reported. This increase in tax gap underscores the importance of increased IRS compliance efforts in key areas. And what are they going to do for these increased compliance efforts? Well, they're going to use AI to crack down on the ultra-rich taxpayers. And do you think they're just going to be using this on the ultra-rich? No, of course not. As I've already stated, they're only going to ramp up what they're doing already, and they're going to put their foot on the pedal, and it's only going to ground people who are impoverished further into the dirt. The IRS plans to use artificial intelligence to crack down on tax schemes by wealthy individuals and businesses, the agency said. This move is the latest in the agency's reshuffling after an influx of tens of billions of dollars from the Inflation Reduction Act. The Inflation Reduction Act did not actually reduce inflation. It was more so that of the Green Deal 2.0. The federal tax collector said that AI will help audit 75 of the largest partnerships in the United States by the end of the month, including those between hedge funds, real estate investors, publicly traded companies, and large law firms. Each partnership averages around $10 billion in assets. For AI, it helps us see pattern recognition and trends we could not see before, the IRS commissioner stated. It's helping us figure out some of those who present the greatest risk of noncompliance. And what are they saying? The greatest risk of noncompliance? The greatest risk of people who are saying, no, you know what? I don't feel like getting extorted by the federal government and having to pay a large sum of my money to go ahead and be stolen from me so you can spend this on endless wars abroad and have no desire to take care of America at home. Because if you actually had your tax dollars being spent on the things that really mattered, homelessness would not be to the degree that it is. We wouldn't have a veteran suicide epidemic that is galvanizing the entire country with 44 of them committing suicide a day. They would be taken care of. The VA would not be in such a disastrous state. The roads would be in much better condition than they already are. We would see the transportation have such a wide array of capacity to have so many different disparate approaches to solving the problem of public transportation outside of just being cars. We could see so many different things that could happen with your tax dollars, but it doesn't happen because the people at the top are nothing more than criminals who are stealing from you. Now, who are going to be the criminals who are now going to be stealing from you? Well, they'll be doing so with the approval of deadly force from the federal government. The IRS seeks armed accountants ready for deadly force. Even before Congress and President Joe Biden gave the final okay for the IRS to hire 87,000 more agents, and with an $80 billion package, the tax agency is revealing a priority job category that could get first dibs on a huge budget expansion. On its job page is listing a vacancy for special agents to be placed around the country to root out financial fraud. But these are not just openings for financial experts. They will also be armed. Among the job requirements listed says carry a firearm and be willing to use deadly force if necessary. Special agents who can and will be placed around the nation and world have an interesting job according to the IRS description. They are financial analysts, armed, and officers ready for a shootout. So, when I think of something like this, all I can think of is something akin to, Ruby Ridge in Waco, where people were not doing what the government demanded, and what they did is it went in and slaughtered innocent people. Now we see the IRS is hiring special agents prepared to use deadly force if needed and is paying up to $95,000. So they're willing to pay the people who are going to be working at the IRS, who will now be willing to hold you at gunpoint if you do not give the government their fair share. Well, they're going to be making $95,000 a year, more than that of the people who are the poor that they will be going to go extort at gunpoint. Here we see the IRS is hiring armed special agents. According to the U.S., the agency's criminal investigation unit wants people who are legally allowed to carry guns. And here's the deal. Everyone in the United States should be legally allowed to carry guns. The idea that the Second Amendment is restricted is ridiculous, but I will not be going into that tirade. Moving on. These agents must work at least 50 hours weekly and be on call 24/7, even during vacations. And this article realistically doesn't even go into anything more. It's just a plethora of ads after this. Let's go ahead and jump into something that we have from the Mises Institute. This is fantastic, and it's talking about taxes and how the feds collect most of your tax dollars. And this is a perfect example of why the federal government is nothing more than a leviathan that is run off of the lifeblood that is your tax dollars and also the money that is printed out of the Federal Reserve. And this is how they fund their endless pet projects. Let's go ahead and jump into the Mises Institute. The feds collect most of the taxes in America, so they have most of the power. It's clear Americans now have thrown off any notions of subsidiary and instead embrace the idea that the federal government should be called upon to fund pretty much anything and everything. From stimulus checks to paycheck protections, it's assumed an entire national workforce can be propped up by the federal spending. Moreover, in the wake of the 2020 COVID recession, every pressure group from local governments to weapon manufacturers looks to the federal government to offer ever larger amounts of federal spending. Ladled out from the federal pot more than $6 trillion of annual spending, we see that when anyone needs infrastructure, they go to the federal government to pay for it. Need a bailout? You know where to go. And how is this spending possible? Naturally, it can only happen when governments tax or borrow, and the federal government does a whole lot of that. Moreover, the federal government can borrow in increasingly stunning amounts thanks to the monetization of debt going on at the central bank. The feds tax us a whole lot more than the states. But even if we're going to ignore all of the ways that the federal government can spend at astronomical levels thanks to huge deficits and monetary tricks, we find the feds are still very much in the game of collecting goods the old-fashioned way, taxes. And they love them, they use lots of them. Moreover, the feds are collecting a lot more in taxes than even states and cities combined. When it comes to taxes, the federal government is the biggest game in town, and it should surprise absolutely no one that everyone in D.C. is looking for easy cash, whether Republican or Democrat. State and local governments may certainly be looking to take their pound of flesh from the taxpayers, but the fact is that the federal government is taking a whole lot more at every single turn. Indeed, contrary to the U.S. reputation for local control, the United States is not particularly decentralized when it comes to tax revenues and government spending. When it comes to taxation, the central government dominates in America. In his study of taxation, for example, Anwar Shah categorizes the United States as centralized, nothing with numbers similar to those of the Tax Policy Center's claims. The federal government collects more than 60% of all tax revenue in the nation. This puts the U.S. in the same category, according to Shah, as Brazil or Russia. You see all the hand-wringing so much from the people and the political establishment that are so consistently talking about the fact of how great the United States is and moralizing about how wonderful of a nation we are, when it turns out the fact is, when it comes to our tax policy, we're no better than Russia. And I can guarantee you they certainly wouldn't want to admit to that. And when we go on, we go ahead and see this is a graph, and it says IRS collections versus state tax revenues. In red, we see from the feds, and in black, we see from the state. Well, is this not just unbelievable? We can see this goes by the 100 million, 100 million, 200 million, 300 million, 400 million, and then capping off at the end with 500 million. We can see that state tax collection does not even come near to that of what the federal government is extorting from you. I'm going to go ahead and leave it there. Everything will be linked in the description down below if you would like to go ahead and go through any of these things further than what I covered them. Thank you for watching if you got this far. Subscribe if you like this kind of content. Thumbs up if you liked it. Thumbs down if you didn't. Tell me where I'm wrong in the comment section down below. Do not fall for the machinations of the state. The IRS is nothing more than an extortion scheme, and that is something that the mafia absolutely loves, a way to steal money from you. Thank you for watching. Stay lovely, stay great. Peace out.